Welcome to the academic forum of new university here in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and also this forum is co-organized by University for Business and Technology in Pristina in the Republic of Kosovo. My name is Jerneju Letnarju Černiču. I'm a professor of human rights and constitutional law at the university here in Ljubljana, and I will be chairing and moderating today's event. And the topic of today's event is quite topical, particularly here in Southeastern Europe, in the Western Balkans. The topic which we will be discussing today is Kosovo accession to the EU and the role of Slovenia in assisting Kosovo in becoming a member state of the European Union. Many of you would know that Slovenia is taking over the presidency of the Council of the European Union on the 1st of July this year. And I'm honored to have with me six distinguished speakers, six distinguished colleagues, which will help us to understand this complex issue. Among those six colleagues, we have first with us Professor Dr. Blerim Reka, who is a professor at the University for Business and Technology in Pristina. Then we have Associate Professor Behar Selimi, who is also a professor at the University for Business and Technology. And we also have with us Dr. Bekim Sejdiu, who is a judge at the Constitutional Court of Kosovo and also a professor at the same university. Here I may add that Mr. Sejdiu is also a PhD graduate of the Faculty of Government and European Studies of the University, so we are very happy to have you with us, Bekim. And from the Slovenian side, we have three of my colleagues, Professor Matej Avbelj, who is a rector of the university, Assistant Professor Gorazd Justinek, who is a Dean of Faculty of Government and European Studies, and last but not least, Professor Dr. Marko Novak, who is a Vice Rector of new university. So I'm very happy to welcome you here at today's forum. I have to add here that today's event is an example of long-lasting cooperation between the university and the University for Business and Technology in Pristina. This cooperation has been ongoing, if I'm not mistaken, for a decade now. So we are very pleased that also in these circumstances, during the COVID-19 pandemics, we are able to co-organize joint academic forum. Today's event will take place as follows. It will be a debate on this issue of Kosovo accession to the EU. Each of the speakers will depose a question, and then they will have some minutes to answer. And also the questions from the audience are welcome. Throughout the event, you can write them up in the chat section of the Zoom webinar application, and then I will read them out to our speakers. So you can pose them during the event or at the end where we have some minutes to answer the questions from the audience. Now, let us start with the issue of Kosovo accession. We know that Kosovo is a state, is a country which emerged from the former Yugoslavia. We also are aware of the decision of the International Court of Justice, which declared now almost two decades ago that Kosovo's declaration of independence was not illegal under international law, and since then Kosovo is striving to become integrated in the European but also international organizations. One thing we have to note here at the beginning is that there are some member states within the EU which still are a bit reluctant towards the creation of Kosovo as a state in the international community, but also as a member state of the EU, possibility to join as a member state to the European Union. So the issue is quite complex in many ways, connected to the challenges which many of the states in Western Balkans face. So there's much to be discussed. And my first question will be to Mr. Reka, Professor Reka. Yourself, as a former minister of the European Union integration of Kosovo, could you perhaps update the audience on the status of Kosovo accession to the EU, and which are the major challenges, and perhaps also try to submit what are the main arguments for Kosovo to accede to the European Union? What is the added value which the accession could bring to the Republic of Kosovo? Please, yes. The floor is yours.
Yes, Professor Černič, thank you for the question and given the opportunity to explore a very complex issue of the, I called always, asymmetric relation of Republic of Kosovo with European Union, at least compared with the other 5 countries in the region. Of course, it is an issue which will take hours and hours to discuss, but I will try within 4 to 5 minutes, maximum maybe 3 minutes, to summarize very shortly this very complex issue. I will start with the first thesis that the Republic of Kosovo has special relation with the European Union. Differently with other 5 Western Balkan countries, till 2015, Kosovo was out from SA process, or stabilization association process with the European Union. Till its independence in 2008, Republic of Kosovo reform path was guided by STM mechanism, special tracking mechanism of European Commission. And since 2008, European Union applied neutrality, so-called neutrality doctrine towards Kosovo, letting to its member state to recognize the Republic of Kosovo and not take decision in the Council, European Council, as a collective body, as a collective recognition. And we have today very, very paradoxical situation that only 22 from 27 member states recognized the Republic of Kosovo, which are Spain, Greece, Romania, Slovakia, and Cyprus. I wrote many articles and books on this issue, and I just wanted to stress here only one sentence, which is for me another paradox within the European Union. By this, with blocking collective recognition of Republic of Kosovo by EU, European Union itself demonstrates that also a multilateral organization is guided by unilateral decision, or I will call by unilateral vetoes of its member states. The obstacles for Kosovo EU integration delayed for many years, of course, the whole SAA process. Finally, SAA agreement was signed in 2015 and entered in force in 2016, based on SAA and European Reform Agenda, ERA, which is a kind of measuring, tracking mechanism which monitor the way, the time, and the volume of reform agenda. And beside of ERA, also European Union finance Kosovo reform through IPA funds, which launched, till 2027, if I'm not wrong, will be delivered 602 million euro for Kosovo reform path. As far as visa liberalization, this is, of course, is not the last issue. This is a very important issue, but apart from EU integration, it is so-called technical issue, but every day is becoming more and more political issue. Why? Although European Commission in 2018 delivered positive opinion on fulfillment of all 85 criteria of Kosovo government for visa liberalization, Republic of Kosovo still have closed Schengen regime, or as it's called, the blacklist in Schengen regime. And why? Because some of this country are hesitating. I will use this term, like Netherlands, like Germany, like France in particular, and Kosovo citizens are becoming hostage of one unjust and unright political decision of two member states, which creates some kind of Schengen ghetto in the EU, because it is a paradoxical situation. We have around all border of Kosovo, all 5 countries who have visa liberalization with European Union, but Kosovo, inside of this, let's say, conglomerate of free regime with visa, Kosovo is blocked, is closed, is kind of ghetto, isolated ghetto with European Union. I said this is a very short first remarks. Of course, I'm ready to discuss with you further. Just to finish, I just today published my analysis on in general on European Union and Western Balkan. And I think that European Union diplomatically is saying every day that they are not interested for enlargement, they are not interested for EU accession of Western Balkan. And I'm afraid that my prediction from my book published in Brussels in 2010, that no any country from the region will become new member till 2030 is more or less is very realistic. So unfortunately, of course, I am against that, but this is the situation. I hope that Slovenian presidency, Slovenian chair with the European Union, not just because of excellent bilateral relation of Slovenia with Kosovo, but because Slovenia was part of some kind of former Yugoslavia with similar legal, political, economic, social background, with a similar context, knowing the real situation in the Balkan, will push all 6 countries forward and will forward the accession agenda of 6 countries. And in particular for Kosovo will lift this blockade of visa liberalization. Thank you. Sorry, maybe I was a bit long, but.
Thank you, Professor Reka. Yes, you're right. It seems that those signals that enlargements towards the Western Balkans is not on agenda have been coming even before the pandemic, from Brussels and the capitals of the most influential EU member states, and perhaps also that's the reason why the visa liberation policy is so conflicting, towards Kosovo, as the only, as I said, only state from Western Balkans which does not have at the moment visa liberalization in place. Professor Matej Avbelj, like Kosovo, also Slovenia, when it was negotiating its accession to the EU in the second half of the 90s, in the first half of the first decade of 2000, it has been facing challenges. You will remember the famous blockage by the Republic of Italy for a certain time. Perhaps, Matej, could you share with us which were the major challenges of Slovenia's accession to the EU, and how can perhaps Kosovo learn from Slovenia's experiences in order to effectively overcome it in the next years or the next decade?
Thank you, Jernej. Thank you for your question. Thank you for organizing this. It's great to be part of this discussion on the potentials, prospects of Kosovo's accession to the European Union and the Slovenian experience with that regard. So in a nutshell, the state which would like to accede to the European Union always faces two types of challenges. One type of challenges is an external type of challenges, and the other type, of course, is internal, domestic challenges. External challenges relate to what Professor Reka has already described. We have to know that the process of accession to the European Union is regulated by EU law itself, but it's very much like a process under international law. So there is it's rough waters of international relations. It's a lot of log rolling, and it is essentially about conditionality. It is about a state that would like to become a member of the club, and those who are already members of that club are well aware of that, and they are, of course, using, sometimes maybe even abusing their position in the club in order to make sure that their national interests while in the club are fully protected on this potential state's way to the European Union. And this has to be taken into account. So this idea of supranationalism, this civilizational power of the EU is a little bit on the side. It's really international law, properly so-called, and the state that would like to accede to the European Union has to factor that in. And Slovenia learned some lessons. Some of them were pretty hard. Because already at the beginning of the 90s, Slovenia, also because of some domestic challenges that we had in terms of catching up with appropriate standards, we were laggards in comparison to other Central and Eastern European countries. And on that way, in catching up with Central and Eastern European countries who already signed up to the Europe agreement, we found the obstacle underway erected by the Republic of Italy. And typically and unfortunately, these obstacles, these international law sovereignist obstacles, they typically stretch back to some historical events. And the historical event that was at stake here was, of course, the Osimo Agreement, the question of Esuli, the question of optanti, the question of the members of the Italian ethnicity that fled, or some of them deliberately left Yugoslav territories after the Second World War, and their at least economic status hasn't been resolved properly until this very day. So Italy was there pulling some strings, trying to beef up its negotiating positions, and was for several months at least blocking the first Slovenian signature to the Europe agreement, which would get the accession process started in the first place. So, but there was a compromise in place, the Spanish compromise agreed by I think at the time it was still Peterle and the Noce government and Solana. So that was moved out of the way. And I think that's the most important lesson that not just Kosovo has to learn, but it is learning, right? By doing it, it's something that sometimes it's really rough, because the states who are already part of the club, they are using their privileged position in that club. Secondly, second type of challenges, as I mentioned, are domestic challenges. For a state to proceed as quickly and as smoothly towards accession, I would argue it's really beneficial that there is a sort of national unity about the importance of accession to the EU. In Slovenia, that has really existed from the very beginning, even before the independence. Both the post-communist side, the leftist post-communist side, and the Slovenian Spring, they were united in this idea that Slovenia's future is in the European Union. And they created this narrative that we have to do, really, in today's Mario Draghi's words, whatever it takes to get in the European Union. So the reforms, which would be nowadays in the present social political situation literally impossible to be implemented in Slovenia, they were implemented in the beginning of the 1990s. So two conclusions stemming from Slovenia's road to the European Union. It is important to be unified internally, that the project of acceding to the European Union is really part of a well-internalized, widely internalized national political agenda. And then if that's present, then on that basis, Kosovo will also be able to negotiate more smoothly also all external external pitfalls that will be on its way. Thank you, Jernej.
Thank you, thank you, Matej. You're right. There are both internal and external pressures, and perhaps I can here make a bridge to our next speaker, which is Professor Selimi. And my question here would be whether also this general external pressures or situation in Western Balkans, in South Eastern Europe, which has for sure some common features, in all states of Western Balkans, which are already candidate countries, for example, in Serbia, North Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also in Kosovo, but as well in Albania. When we read the reports of European Commission, which are published annually, they often raise concerns about the strength of institutions. They claim that the rule of law is often weak, so that the internal environment is perhaps not prepared at the moment in those states to be reformed and to fulfill conditions which Matej mentions to join the EU in this elite club. So my question to you, Professor Selimi, would be: would you say that Kosovo accession to the EU is conditional, is contingent on the general situation in Western Balkans, or is Kosovo a specific case which should be dealt differently than the cases of North Macedonia, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Albania, or Kosovo would share the experiences and the fate, the destiny of those states from the Western Balkans? Of course, we know that there is this obvious elephant in the room of these 5 member states, which at the moment are reluctant to give a green light to Kosovo's further negotiations to join the club. But nonetheless, if we disregard this blockage, would you say that Kosovo's accession is perhaps the question of a larger story of the Western Balkans?
Thank you, Professor Jernej. In the beginning, let me express my gratitude to Dean Visarhoja for his commitment to bring us together in this academic forum. Furthermore, let me show respects and gratitude to our colleagues from Slovenia and Kosovo, including, I see here, students too from Kosovo. I know by name some of them, and I would like to also thank them to be today with us. Being a speaker after Professor Reka, and I saw also Professor Matej, is good luck sometimes, because you can get some ideas to help your speech. But on the other hand, it is also bad luck, because while you speak, the audience could be still with their thoughts, with their ideas, and you will not be heard. However, I will try to answer these questions, and I will without doubt say that yes, it is contingent. It is Kosovo process of association. Process of accession is depending from the overall situation in the Western Balkans. This is from the logical point of view. This is how it should be. But we are witness to the fact that the EU is changing its methodology, trying to have different approaches to different countries. We in Kosovo, as Professor Reka mentioned already, we witnessed that they had a special project and special criteria for visa liberalization, for example, and even met those criteria, we still have no visa. And this is a different approach to something which is in common to all the region countries, let's say. In proponent to this, what I am saying is also another step by the EU a few days ago, when they introduced a new methodology, the accession talks with Serbia, Montenegro, whom EU predicted their accession to 2025. This is from the impact point of view that the surrounding area has in the Kosovo integration process to EU. On the other hand, if neighborhood, good relationships and regional cooperation are the additional conditions for, as it is by EU set it up for Western Balkans countries, in this case, the EU should insist on Kosovo and Serbia to get a final agreement as to the last criteria for membership in the current borderlines. As soon as this attitude going to be emphasized, particularly to Serbia, all illusions in Republika Srpska and the part of the Serbian community in Kosovo for possibly new borders, bringing all of them into one national umbrella, will be defeated. To me, these illusions produced and kept still alive by the Serbian president, who has grew up with the mantra Great Serbia, are the main obstacles, and for sure will a deep impact on the overall process of integration of Bosnia and Kosovo in the EU. Thus, the conclusion, I am convinced that this kind of approach can have a real impact on general welfare and stability in Western Balkans if EU is going to persist and to make clear criteria, particularly for Serbia. This is for now. I think I was trying to be in time, and also I have to say that you are not lucky if Professor Sejdiu is going to speak after you, because you will be forgotten very soon when you hear him. Thank you to everybody.
Great, thank you, Professor Selimi. You're right. The future is intertwined, interconnected in Western Balkans. We will see how it unfolds. But let me turn to my colleague, Gorazd, Dean of Faculty of Government European Studies. Gorazd, I remember that yourself, in your previous role as a head of the Center for European Perspective of the Slovenian government, you co-organized many events on the potential EU enlargement towards the Western Balkans with different stakeholders from all the countries. So, what would be your take? What should be, or what will be, the EU strategy for the enlargement towards Western Balkans in the future? Can Slovenian government, as a president of the Council of the European Union, contribute to speeding up the process, or you would say that you are more pessimist in this regard, that the next half of the year it won't be so important, so essential as to the enlargement of the EU? Please, Gorazd, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jernej, for the invitation and for this introduction. Yes, I will try to summarize a couple of my ideas of what at least is going on in my mind in this regard in the next following minutes. Yes. Now, first of all, if you ask me whether I'm an optimist or a pessimist, I would say I am pretty much a realist. And in regard of the Western Balkans, the region of the Western Balkans, usually, you know, whenever we have been, and I have been doing this for almost, I think, 20 years or something like that, whenever we spoke about the region of the Western Balkans, you know, whenever you look at the map of Europe, you know, you see the European Union, and then you see a blank spot in between here in the Balkan regions. And of course, I think it's in a way logical that this part of the map should be sooner or later also an integrative part of the, let's say, European Union, or the organization which more or less is the most important, of course, at our continent. Now, when will that happen? Of course, I think I could agree here a lot with what my colleague Matej Avbelj said, that of course there are two things. First of all, external factors, and of course internal. Of course, the homework needs to be done back home, and then of course also, let's say, all the outside factors have to, in a way, put themselves together. Now, since I'm saying that I'm also a realist, and if you're asking me what the Slovenian presidency could add, or in this regard could let's say bring on the table, maybe I can bring back maybe for those of us who have been maybe also involved in the 2008 presidency, Slovenian presidency at that time, and I can say that at that time, I think there were quite some very important things which were done by the Slovenian, let's say, presidency in regard of Kosovo at that time, if you remember. And I'm very sure that also the 2021 presidency, Slovenian presidency, of course, will put some additional pillars in this regard, also in regard of the region. Now, why? Of course, logically, because this has been always a region which was, in a way, from the Slovenian perspective, a region which was important for us, not speaking only, let's say, in regional sense, but of course it's important from the economic perspective of Slovenia. It's important also from many other different perspectives, of course. And in this regard, if I maybe recall a bit to the Sofia Western Balkans, EU Western Balkans Summit, which was, I think, in November last year, and was in a way a continuation pretty much of the Western Balkan Summit, which took place, I think, in May in Zagreb last year. The EU policy towards the region is more or less, yes, it goes in line with the words like, yes, we are committed, we will foster, we will support, and so on, the further regional cooperation, and so on and so on. But of course, I think there is, in a way, a commitment from the Brussels perspective, or at least for a large portion of countries which are from this region, towards the region and towards the further enlargement. But from this realistic point of view, I have to say that whenever European Union was involved, let's say, in some kind of crisis, or there was an external crisis, whether was this in 2008, 2009 global financial economic crisis, then 2015 the migration crisis, and now probably, of course, the COVID situation which we have, and this year, of course, and later on we will see how the economic recovery of the European Union, and especially the countries in the European Union, will develop. I would say that whenever there was such a crisis on the agenda or on the table, then of course, realistically speaking, enlargement was a little bit put downwards toward the agenda, and that's why I would be a bit more realistic in this regard in forecasting when the future enlargement could take place. Maybe so much from my side for the introduction. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you, Gorazd. It's very difficult to predict at the moment how the things will unfold. Perhaps those who were realists before the pandemics, now I'm not sure what are they now. But given also how the things are in Western Balkans, one has to go step by step, I would say, in this regard. Now we covered external pressures, external circumstances which may affect the accession of Kosovo to the EU. And let us now turn to the internal challenges. And here I'd like to pose a question to Mr. Bekim Sejdiu, who is a judge at the Constitutional Court of Kosovo. Bekim, could you tell us about about the rule of law situation in Kosovo. Is Kosovo concerning human rights protection, the rule of law, which are the benchmarks, one of the benchmarks for a country to enter the EU? Is Kosovo prepared at the moment to enter into EU in the medium term, in the next 10 years? If not, which reforms, in your opinion, should be undertaken in order to meet these goals of rule of law and human rights protection? Bekim, please.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Černiču. I would like first to actually to take use of this opportunity to reiterate our feeling of gratitude to Slovenia for the support that we have had. Of course, we never forgot the support during the difficult years of 1990s and also in the crucial year of 2008. What gives me a special feeling today to participate in this forum is the fact that, as Professor Černiču said, I completed my doctoral studies at the Department of International and Diplomatic Studies of the Faculty of Government and European Studies in Kran, where I worked under the mentorship of an outstanding intellectual and person, Dr. Milan Jazbec. But also I had a great pleasure to have you, Professor Černiču, as chairman of my thesis dissertation committee. So whatever wrong I say today, my professors will be blamed. A little joke here, of course. As you said, I mean, the forum is very timely, as you said in the very beginning, not only because Slovenia is preparing to assume the rotating presidency of the EU, but also we have a new government in Kosovo, which in the program for the year 2021-2025 has reconfirmed that integration into the EU is one of our key foreign policy objectives, because EU or Euro-Atlantic integration, as we put it, because we do not we sort of see EU and NATO as two pillars of the Euro-Atlantic umbrella to which we want to belong, and we see it as identity more than anything else. So as I said, the program of the new government puts particular emphasis on this. So this is what also makes this forum very timely. And on top of it, as you might be aware, I think everybody is aware that we are facing, I don't want to say pressure, but requests from the EU and from particular countries from the West, or the major countries, I would put like that, to have or to engage intensively in the last stage of a dialogue with Serbia, which is supposed to conclude with a comprehensive agreement which would normalize relations between the two countries. And I'm pretty sure that Slovenia will have to deal with that issue as well during the presidency of the EU. Just as a digression, Professor Justinek mentioned the first half of 2008 when Slovenia had the rotating presidency of the EU. And I recall when at that time I was working at the cabinet of the foreign minister of Kosovo. Actually, it has been just a couple of weeks, perhaps a month, after we established the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And one of the first visits that we did was in Slovenia, where we met with the foreign minister, the Professor Rupen, whom I had the chance then to meet in the faculty in Kran. So this is quite natural, because not only that we see Slovenia as a strategic partner in political and economic aspect, but also we see Slovenia as some sort of a window of the Western Balkans towards the EU, and perhaps the vice versa, like the ears of the EU in the Western Balkans. Now, with regards to the rule of law and constitutional democracy, how strong they are, where we are as Kosovo, I think Germans have a saying, how good you are, it depends with whom you are compared. My inclination is always to compare our progress with our past, because points of references are very important always. When it comes to the rule of law specifically, of course, rule of law is a culture as much as a formal mechanism or instrument. We can measure the second dimension. When it comes to the practical terrain, how do you measure practically the rule of law in a certain country? Usually the point of reference are different, but most, at least in Europe, are the benchmarks, the rule of law checklist of the Venice Commission. This is the point of reference that we take when we want to measure how much certain countries have progressed in the rule of law. Of course, this checklist includes various criteria or benchmarks such as legality, legal certainty, equality before the law, access to justice, and so on. If we see this in a perspective, let's say from 2008 when Kosovo declared independence, I think the progress in Kosovo has been meaningful in terms of the rule of law, in the improvement of the rule of law standards. So we have courts which are more and more effective as they used to be. Some high-profile cases are being prosecuted. And so on. But still we face two types of challenges. First category of challenges is similar for all countries in our region, all countries undergoing a transition. Of course, our transition was three-dimensional. First, we passed through the transition that every country in Eastern Europe passed through, like from the communist, the old economic and political system towards the market democracy. And then we passed the transition from war-torn to a post-war society, and then lately we passed the transition from an international administration to the independent status. And obviously, as it has been mentioned, not every country is comfortable with the fact that Kosovo is free and independent, including some countries in the EU. But some of the challenges that we face in terms of the rule of law are a reflection of our specific context. Speaking as a Kosovo. This has to do first with the fact that we have had two international rule of law missions in Kosovo during the last 2 decades. We were put under the international administration in 1999, which was led by the UN. And that administration had a strong rule of law component, whereby we had judges, prosecutors, police officers with specific mandate and tasks from all over the world. And then we had in 2008, when we declared independence, we had the EULEX or EU rule of law mission with as far as I can recall, around 2,000 prosecutors, judges, and police. This mission has been transferred in 2018, and now it remains mostly with the monitoring sort of functions. And now we have on our own. We have, of course, it's quite natural to expect us to be at some point on our own. As a reflection of this specific circumstances, we face some challenges which are peculiar perhaps to Kosovo or to countries which are in similar positions, such as prosecution of the war crimes. Of course, for some of the worst massacres in Kosovo, there was nobody was held responsible. Second, we face the challenge of a rule of law and court proceedings when it comes to the inter-ethnic or ethnically related court issues which originate from the conflict or from the war of 1998-1999, and the challenge of prosecuting high-profile. So it's a challenge perhaps everywhere in the region. So these are challenges which are specific for Kosovo. Beyond that, of course, we face the challenges and hurdles which are present everywhere in the justice system in the region, such as the insufficiency of the excessive length of proceedings, insufficient professionalism of the courts, difficulty of applying human rights standards, especially though applying the jurisprudence of the Court of Justice of the European Union and European Court of Human Rights, and so on. So yes, there was a progress. Yes, there was challenges. Are we ready to join the EU with this kind of standards in the rule of law and human rights protection? I think yes. If we compare Kosovo with some countries which are already in the EU, I wouldn't say. As I said, it's very important, the points of reference always with whom we are compared. With regards to the constitutional standards or constitutional democracy, I think, well, democracy is becoming a very moving standard lately, as we see this with the rise of the so-called authoritarian democracies or illiberal democracies, as Farid Zakaria used to call them. But I will give you just two examples which show that Kosovo has evolved and has reached a quite mature stage of democratic life. The first example has to do with the frequent transfer of political power through the elections, free and fair elections, which were recognized by every political party. No political party disputed the result of the election, and we had governments coming and going as a result of the election process. The second aspect, which is usually neglected, but I think is very important, has to do with the decisions of the court where I serve, Constitutional Court of Kosovo has taken some very tough decisions. Like as a result of the decisions of this court, we had 2 presidents were dismissed from the office, 1 government, Speaker of the Parliament. We repealed several laws, abolished like a negotiating team which government has created for dialogue with Serbia and so on. So these decisions, of course, they cannot go without a debate. It's quite natural. It's quite normal. But it is very important that they were obeyed and respected. So I see these 2 facts as important indication that Kosovo has reached quite an advanced or matured stage of political emancipation in a democratic perspective. So perhaps it took me a bit longer than I planned. Thank you very much, and I will of course welcome the comments with regards to this particular question.
Excellent, Bekim. Thank you for your insights. I agree with you that Kosovo perhaps can be distinguished from other countries in Western Balkans, but perhaps also generally in Eastern Europe as to the at least functioning judiciary. We don't know, Bekim, that for a large period of time, I'm not sure if this is still the case, foreigners, international judges were part of Kosovo judiciary, and that for sure affected the quality, and fairness and the rule of law of Kosovo judiciary. Now, last but not least, we turn to Professor Marko Novak, who is a vice rector of New University. Marko also some years ago served as a head of the Slovenian Judiciary Council. So, Marko, you have a great insight into the functioning of the Slovenian constitutional democracy, the rule of law. My initial question to you, Marko, you remember from yesterday, was what can Kosovo learn from Slovenian experiences of this transition from a country governed by rule by law to country governed by rule of law? Perhaps I want to challenge you, Marko. How can Slovenia and Kosovo share their rule of law experiences? We know that in Slovenia often when parts of civil society complain about the functioning of Slovenian judiciary, we know that the trust in judiciary is very low in Slovenia. They often submit that perhaps it would be good to import judges, from Austria, Germany, Switzerland, and so on, in order to make judiciary stronger. Such is the case already in Kosovo, at least under the international administration. So, Marko, what can Slovenia and Kosovo learn, and how can Slovenia advise Kosovo in meeting this rule of law criteria when acceding to the EU? Please, Marko.
Thank you. Thanks to you, Jernej, and Visa for organizing this forum. It's nice to be again with our Kosovar colleagues to discuss certain issues. Yes, I'm not so much familiar with the current situation, so I'll focus more on ordinary judiciary rather than constitutional judiciary. So I'm not really familiar right now with the situation of Kosovo's ordinary judiciary, but I can maybe suggest certain best practices to follow, although there are also some bad practices from Slovenia. So I'm not gonna go into that very much, but what is like the most important that I learned while being member of Slovene judiciary was not from the Slovene judiciary itself, but from the European network of councils for the judiciary. So I was lucky to be for several years to be a member of the executive board of that network, and the network organizes certain workshops, study groups, and they produce several reports every year. the network has been in existence for more than a decade, I guess close to 15 years, and they really developed so many standards and guidelines for, so to say, for a proper European judiciary. And so I would call especially attention to some specific issues, and then maybe at the end try to answer the second part of Jerneju's question. And so what is important is not only independence of the judiciary. Of course, in dealing with judicial independence, there are two parts of it. One is external independence, which refers to being or to try to avoid political influence. Yeah, and for that you need, of course, you need some institutional safeguards, especially with regard to the executive branch, not so much with regard to the to MPs. But then on the other hand, what is also important is the so-called internal independence, meaning independence of individual judges from court presidents, and also from the so-called, I don't know, this is more a sociological issue, so-called judicial subculture, meaning, so to say, false solidarity among judges, you know, solidarity among judges about improper things, so to say, you know, about best selection of, you know, and you know, I could discuss many different examples about that. And then what is also important is accountability of the judiciary towards society, you know, and so we need to be aware that the judiciary is embedded and need to remain embedded within a democratic society, meaning that trials, you know, must be public, judgments must be published, you know, judiciary must need to explain to the public about their judgments. There need to be press conferences. One of best practices was also the so-called press judges. This is, Slovenia was not able to establish this institution, which is really a best practice from the Netherlands. And then, of course, there need to be representatives of the public in the Judicial Council, you know. Then another important pillar within accountability is also efficiency, of course, you know. So courts need to be efficient. There shouldn't be too many, you know, backlogs. Then courts need to be timely, you know, so the duration of proceedings need to be proper. Then, of course, judges need to be professionally responsible, you know, so there needs to be meritocratic selection of new judges, of new people in the profession. So there need to be proper disciplinary proceedings, you know. Not only judges should be members of disciplinary panels, but also there need to be at least lay members of the judicial councils need to be members of this, you know, this disciplinary panels, and then there need to be also attention paid to judicial ethics. And then, of course, you know, so there need to be really some kind of impetus, some kind of endeavor towards taking care of public trust in the judiciary. So there need to be periodic public surveys about the trust of public in the judiciary. You know, the judiciary needs to act proactively, you know, so they need to inform the public about what is going on. So this is the danger is that the judiciary would kind of close itself into its own, so to say, castle, you know, into its own ivory tower. So maybe these are some, of course, and there could be some bad practices from not meeting these standards, especially. But I would refer all of you to these standards, to these guidelines, to these reports, especially of these networks. But there are some other, you know, there are some other commissions like within the Council of Europe, like the Consultative Council of European Judges, and especially, I guess we still also in Slovenia, we need to learn from these benchmarks, of course, and I'm sure they will be part of the negotiation process when dealing with the chapter on administration of justice. And so, but of course, I guess Slovenia can help with that, especially when we reflect not on some best practices from our judiciary, but also on some, you know, bad practices. This is all for now, Jernej. I think I responded to your questions, but I'm willing, of course, to discuss that further.
Thank you, Marko, for these insights into the functioning of Slovenian judiciary and for putting out, submitting recommendations on how a proper judiciary should function. Now, we went through the first round. We have one question from the audience, which was posed by Bashkim Nuredi, and he asks, where do you see the future of the European Union in the coming years, and what are the forms of Slovenians' support in the Kosovo path to the EU? Excellent question. You all know, you're aware that a couple of days ago on the Europe's Day, 9th of May, there was an inaugural meeting of the Conference on the Future of Europe convened by President of French Republic Emmanuel Macron, and he was joined by presidents of Commission, the Parliament, and also the current President of the Council of the European Union, Antonio Costa. So my question, perhaps as a closing question to all of you, and you can approach this question from the perspective you wish to. And I would like to start with Matej. Matej, where do you see the question of enlargement in the conference on the future of the EU? We all know, particularly in this region of Southeastern Europe, we are very much aware what it means if the largest and perhaps the most impactful and most influential countries of the EU, France and Germany, perhaps turn a blind eye to the Western Balkans. We have seen, we saw the consequences in the years 92, 95 in the Balkan wars, and it seems, and some commentators, when one reads the commentators from the daily newspapers in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Serbia, Macedonia, one gets an impression that we are at the crucial point of departure, that Europe has to show a commitment towards Western Balkans, towards Kosovo and other states which are eager to join the EU. If not, we are before the moment. There's a danger that perhaps the things could again escalate in Bosnia and Herzegovina and elsewhere, perhaps God forgiven, on the Serbian Kosovo border. So, Matej, my question to you is there a place for EU enlargement in the conference on the future of the EU, or if not, what should be, if any, in your opinion, a place for those countries from the Balkans to not be omitted again from Europe? They are European countries, and we should not forget it. Matej.
Yes, Jernej, thank you. You're absolutely right. I think there has always been a commitment to the Western Balkans. I think the enlargement is always on the agenda, but this time around, the homework has to be done not only in the states that are aspiring towards accession, but also in the European Union itself. The enlargement, the Big Bang enlargement in 2004. It was a hard nut to crack. It was a big thing to swallow, and since then the European Union has been transformed in many ways, and it has equally gone through many crises. And I think this conference for the future of Europe is not just a soul-searching exercise, but it's also a means of devising an institutional setup that will provide for a long-term viability of the European Union. So first of all, I think the European Union has to find for itself a modus operandi that will ensure its own functionality in the scope of 27. We lost one of the member states also on the count of the low functionality. We haven't been able to, the output legitimacy has simply been dwindling. So I think before an enlargement takes place, and that should be on the agenda and is on the agenda, the European Union has to undergo certain reforms. The enlargement is extremely important, and I think it's essential not just for these aspiring states themselves, but also for the geostrategic reasons. It is no secret that there are strong, not just European, but world global powers interested in the Balkans, not just Russia traditionally, but here is now also the influence of China. In order to defend its own threshold, the European Union has to embrace the Western Balkans. So there are also very pragmatic reasons, not just civilizational, human rights, rule of law reasons for which the Western Balkans should be included in the European Union. So I'm confident that this accession will take place. It won't be tomorrow. It will be in a few years. But I've also predicted, I think I've assessed in one of my papers that probably when this accession happens, also the EU will be importantly reformed, and that when this accession happens, the European Union will function in form of concentric circles. I think one of the outcomes, or at least gradual outcomes of also this debate on the future of Europe, will be realization that there is actually a multi-speed Europe, that there is a core structured around the Eurozone, which needs to be democratized, politicized, etc., with its own foreign policy, army, defense, strong defense, or strong protection of external borders. But I think the Union as such, as a framework, could be flexible enough to provide for external concentric circles in which the other countries could fit in. And I think this more flexible, variegated model could be a realistic framework that would also embrace our friends and colleagues in the Western Balkans.
Great, thank you, Matej. Professor Reka, what is your take on that?
Yes. Thank you to question raised by Bekim, which in fact contain two separate questions. One is the future of European Union, and the next or second question is how could Slovenia support Kosovo path to European Union? Regarding the first question, on 9th of May, just 3 days ago, in Strasbourg, there was a starting process of strategic reviewing of European Union. There was all chief of state and the governments, president of European Commission, and started discussion what European Union would like in the next 10, 15 or 20 years. I try to answer to this question in my book on failed European Constitution, Constitution for Europe, which was published in 2007, by raising the academic theoretical dilemma, nation state versus member states. What I think about this double position of the same state, till accession, one aspirant state, one candidate state delivered part of its sovereignty to European Union institutions and so on, changed its constitution, harmonized legislation and so on, in order to become one day EU member state. And when everybody think that with that he lose its sovereignty, from the moment when this former nation state became now member state, it's recuperating, or I will say it gain its sovereign rights by only one instrument, which is the right of veto against all institutional decision. Always when one former national state, now member state, think that any decision would violate the national interest of each state. I don't want to take more time of many cases how only one state could block, not other state, but all decision making. You know what happened last December at European Council, even with one strong and powerful Germany, there were 48 hours to convince Hungary and Poland to give their consensus for a budget, a 7-year budget. Although, as Professor Matej and Bekim and of course Professor Novak mentioned, Hungary and Poland are now under monitoring system of rule of law. Since 2019, European Commission adopted one specific document, blueprint point for action for rule of law. And on 30th of October, it was published a report, a first report of this process, when exactly Hungary and Poland were mentioned as a state, member state who violate rules, norms, value, and so on. Now, I think that it was in Strasbourg 3 days ago mentioned, but it was not discussed with the crucial point without which the reform of European Union could not be done. This is a consensual decision-making mechanism at European Council. It was maybe appropriate in 1951 when the European Union idea was created based on Paris Treaty with only 6 member states. But I could not imagine how could work this consensual decision-making system in one European enlarged European Union of 27 states. Something should be done, maybe as a compromise to introduce a new mechanism, consensus -1, which means the decision could be adopted even with one veto against the 27. But this is only my proposal. I could not waste your time. Regarding the this is a long story, and of course, within the 3-4 minutes, we could not discuss the future of Europe. But really, European Union need crucial and substantial reform. And now, regarding the second question, how Slovenia could support Kosovo integration process. Knowing that Slovenia was also the part of former Yugoslavia, and Slovenia was created as a sovereign independent state based on the process of dissolution of former Yugoslavia, based on Badinter's opinions, and which I unfortunately I always criticize this Badinter opinion because this Badinter's opinion discriminated two former autonomous provinces like Kosovo and Vojvodina, and was not treated as other 6 republics, because based on Constitution 74, all 8 were the constitutional constituent of federalism of Yugoslavia. And why a French judge did this discrimination between republics and province and apply the well-known uti possidetis juris principle of International Court of Justice, I don't know, but really this is the origin of some kind of 25-year discriminated status of Kosovo in international community. As I said in the beginning, look at what the European Union is doing today. Almost 10 years, European Union is mediating the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia. And always they said that they are neutral on the as a mediator, but during the 10 years dialogue, they was a neutral against the status of one negotiating state, in this case in Kosovo. How could be neutral mediator if you are neutral against one negotiation? So I think this is what I call asymmetric neutrality of European Union towards Kosovo, and it should be changed if really European Union want to have normalization, full normalization of these 2 countries. Without that, if European Union will continue in this next new phase of dialogue with discriminating status of Kosovo and not as an equal negotiation part, I don't see any result. Finally, very short, Slovenia could support Kosovo, first of all, as an urgent, as a short-term priority to lift this blockade of 2 member states against visa liberalization, because Slovenia have a clear dossier of European Commission since 2018 with 85 fulfilled criteria of Kosovo, and as a chair, as a presidency of European Union, should convince them that really is not fair after 14 years since the other 5 countries of the region have visa liberalization, only Kosovo to remain blocked in one ghetto of European Union. As far as process of integration, yes, Slovenia as a chair in the Council of Stabilization and Association process, which chaired, of course, with White Slovenia, to push forward this SAA process agenda. Sorry for too much wording.
Thank you, Professor Reka, for your suggestions for Slovenian government during the presidency. Now, we suggest that we try to keep our comments very short. So I would ask each of our remaining speakers to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Gorazd, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Jernej. Yes, maybe my concluding remark in this way would be that here again, I could maybe relate to what already was said by Matej, that yes, there are other, let's say, influential powers which are interested in the region. And it's in geoeconomics or geopolitics, however you would like to call it, we usually say that if one, let's say, part of or one region is left without any interest, then some other, let's say, interest will jump into that region. And I think that Europe should not forget that. And definitely, as I said in the beginning, in my first comment, I think that the Balkan region is, of course, if we only look at the map, is a part of the continent, and I think it should act like that in a way. That would be from my side. Thank you.
Great, Gorazd. Thank you for your comments. Professor Behar, Selimi.
Thank you. I think as a concluding remark, Slovenian leadership is ready to support Kosovo. And this is historically, starting from 1992, from Cankarjev Dom, when Kosovo has got support from then President of Slovenia, Kučan, through President Janez Drnovšek, who till the last days of his life was very supportive to Kosovo. and currently Prime Minister, who is already mentioned in his agenda for 6-month leadership of EU that Kosovo is going to be among the issues. They are ready. Now is on Kosovo to ask more support, more help, concrete help from Slovenia, and I'm sure that both those components are going to support us to send further in our agenda to EU integration process. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Behar. You're right, Slovenia and Kosovo have a long-lasting relationship stemming from times in former Yugoslavia, but also from the 90s. So hopefully your words will come to fruition in the next 6 months. Marko, please, the floor is yours for the final words.
Yeah, so concerning the future of EU, it's really unpredictable, but I deplore the UK's exit from the EU, mainly due to the tradition of their judiciary, which nicely counterbalanced the continental, bureaucratically, so to say, oriented judiciary. You know, so I hope Scotland might come back. But when it comes to Slovenia's support to Kosovo, I'm sure, you know, so we already have some kind of tradition of supporting Kosovo. So I'm sure that also during the presidency of Slovenia to the EU Council, you know, Slovenia will do everything that's possible to accomplish that. Yeah.
Thank you, Marko. And last but not least, Bekim, Sejdiu, perhaps more specific questions to you, as I know that you wrote your thesis in the field of international relations, and as previous speakers mentioned, the Western Balkans are becoming from month to month a battlefield between the interests of superpowers, which some of them, they also have the interest to perhaps undermine the European Union. We know the reports and even the facts of why the Brexit was voted for the referendum. No, it was not a coincidence. So from this point of view, from a geostrategic point of view, Bekim, how would you assess the importance that Western Balkan countries joined the EU? Is there really a great danger for Western Balkan countries to fall even more so as they are at the moment under influence of People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Actually, it's just enough, I think, or sufficient to see the developments in Ukraine or trends in Bosnia and Herzegovina or lately Montenegro to understand how much it is important to have as much as possible NATO and EU in the Balkans. It takes actually only a few interethnic incidents or let's say some sort of election revolution
It seems that we lost. Okay, go ahead, Bekim. Go ahead. Connection is not stable.
Do you hear me? So I think for Slovenia, it is very important. From the Kosovo perspective, apart from the visa liberalization, which, as it has been said, it is unreasonable, unjust, counterproductive what is being happening to Kosovo with regards to visa liberalization. Beyond that, I think very important for Slovenia to push not to let the enthusiasm in the Western Balkans towards the EU to drop, because this might have primarily stability repercussions. is not so it's not just in terms of the prosperity, economic or whatever, but it has to do first with any vacuum in terms of the enthusiasm of the countries in the Balkans, Western Balkans, towards the EU. Might have very bad repercussions for the stability of the region. So of course we know as a rotating presidency, it's not that I mean we know the possibilities are limited. Now with regards to that, very quickly, to how do I see the future of the EU, I think was the question in the Western Balkans. I'm still again having problems.
The connection
right?
is not very stable, Bekim, but perhaps we can.
I apologize. So I will stop. I will stop here because it seems that I'm having problems. I apologize for this.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. Thank you, Bekim and Sejdiu, for the last comments. It was a pleasure to chair, to moderate this debate on the potential accession of the Republic of Kosovo to the EU and the role of Slovenia in this regard. The topic is seminal. It will be ongoing in the next months, in the next years. I'm extremely honored, also happy that we organized this forum, academic event with our partners in Pristina at the University for Business and Technology, and especially its faculty of law. And here I have to give my thanks to my colleague Vizar Hoxha, Professor Vizar Hoxha, the Dean of the Faculty of Law, which helped to co-organize today's forum. I'm sure this is an example of ongoing cooperation between our two institutions, and also a commitment from both of us to future cooperation at different levels. Now, academic year is slowly coming to the end here at the European Faculty of Law University. If I'm not mistaken, it's our last week of instruction. That doesn't mean that we will stop with organization of these academic forums and webinars. I'm sure that you can expect from us that there will be at least one, if not two, academic forums before spring turns to summer, not least because of the fact that the Slovenia is taking over the presidency of the Council of the European Union, as we mentioned several times today, and we'll try to organize at least one forum in this regard, perhaps before the start of the presidency. For now, for today, I would like to thank Professor Blerim, Reka, Professor Behar, Selimi, Dr. Bekim, Sejdiu, Professor Matej Avbelj, Professor Gorazd, Justinek, and Professor Marko Novak. And of course, thank you, participants and audience, for sticking towards until the end of today's forum. And I wish you all the best, and see you at the next forum of New University. Best wishes.